Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 446 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm probably asked to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So like I said last episode, we're about, a month, maybe 3.5 weeks before the NFL season starts. And now you're starting to get the nitty gritty. You're getting in the preseason. You're seeing a bunch of games. You're seeing a bunch of rookies and how they can affect the season. What I usually do is I'm going to break down the divisions. Now, seeing as though there's 8 divisions and there's about 4 to 5 episodes left before the season starts of the Unpopular Podcast, not saying that the podcast is going to stop, but I'm saying I have about 5 episodes before the season starts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double up this episode and probably next episode and talk about 2 different divisions. Now, the divisions that I want to start with is the NFC South and the NFC East. The reason why I want to start those is now probably when I'm done all my divisions, I'll probably rank them most interesting, rank them best to worst. I don't know. But both of these divisions have a lot of storylines to them, but I don't think there's a lot of expectations coming out of each division outside of maybe 1 or 2 teams that we'll discuss. The first team in the first division I'm going to start with this episode is the NFC South. And I want to talk about how fascinating the Atlanta Falcons are. I don't know if you guys can tell, but there is a lot of excitement, a lot of promise coming out of Atlanta. Now, where the conversation is kind of going to go with Atlanta is, what should the expectation be? The theme that you're going to hear a lot in this episode is expectation. And I know that the expectations for different teams, at least going into the season, is the same. You can look at the worst team in the NFL. You can look at the best team in the NFL. Everybody's expectation is the same, usually going into the season. Now, there are some teams that's actively tanking, but usually the active tank doesn't start until as a team, as an organization, we're not going to be that good. For the Atlanta Falcons, they've been in this odd rut. They've been in this odd section. They've been in this odd mindset for the last few years now. They've had talented names. Atlanta has always had a talented name, a talented face, a talented player. But they've never really had the players around them to put it together. They've never really had that glue guy. They've never really had those players that when you put them all together, they make a strong, cohesive team. Or they've never really had the player that can get the best out of their best players. I think that's why the Atlanta Falcons, at least this year, is so fascinating, because they think Kirk Cousins is the guy to do that. Or do they think Kirk Cousins is the guy to do that because they drafted Michael Penix? Let me look at it. I look at it like this. When you have a team as young as the Atlanta Falcons, yes, you need good players. It's when you're in professional sports, you need good players. That's the name of the game. But you also need that player that can steer the ship. And Atlanta, like I just stated, hasn't really had that player. Do I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback? Yes. I think Kirk Cousins has been a good quarterback his entire career. Do I think that Kirk Cousins is the type of quarterback that can lead a team, lead a franchise to new heights? No. He had an opportunity to do that in Washington, was not able to. Obviously, he got Washington to the playoffs, I believe, but he wasn't able to go any further. Same with Minnesota. This isn't me poo-pooing or crapping on Justin or crapping on Kirk Cousins. This is actually, in a weird way, me bigging up Kirk Cousins, because there's a reason why there's excitement outside of, like, in Atlanta. On top of that, you see they just got Matthew Judon, or I don't know if the deal is finalized, but they're in the final stages of a deal to get Matthew Judon. They're about to get Justin Simmons from the Broncos. This team has a lot of promise. And on top of that, the spoiler alert, I don't think the NFC South is going to be that good this year. When you look at the team as a whole, I know that people are going to say, and we'll talk about them a little bit later in the episode, but I know people are going to say that the best team in the NFC South probably is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after you saw what happened last year with the success, some of the players that they have on defense. But I honestly think that if everything works out the way that they're supposed to work out and everything clicks, Atlanta can win this division. This is the most wide open division out of every single division in football. Not because you have juggernauts, but because every team, I believe, outside of maybe one, which we'll talk about in a second, but every team, in my opinion, starts on an even playing field. Now, I know that that's obviously like, hey, every team starts 0-0, every team has a shot, but no. No. The reason, I think that every team has their ups and every team has their downs in NFC South, but I think they're all close outside of maybe one. And a lot of pressure is put on, I think, this division, because this I know the cliche is this is anyone's division, anyone can win. No, that's not usually the case. Like, spoiler alert, I don't think anybody is gonna win the AFC. I don't think anyone can win the AFC South. Like, that's one team. I'm not AFC South, AFC West. That's one team. This one, I think that with the new head coach Raheem Morris, with a lot of you're hoping that a Kirk Cousins can get the best out of a Kyle Pitts, which it seems like they have not been able to do. Understand Rondale Moore, he's probably out for the season, which sucks, but you still have Drake London. You still have Bijan Robinson. There are some really, really good names on this roster. But let's reverse, and let's talk about Kirk Cousins for a second, and the situation and the state in which he is in. During draft night, the talk of the draft was pretty much when Atlanta drafted Michael Penix after acquiring Kirk Cousins this offseason. And I heard a lot of people not understand why that move happened. Like I started this episode with, Kirk Cousins has a ceiling. You know, I look at Kirk Cousins, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to tie it in together. But I look at Kirk Cousins the same way I look at Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is who he is. If you look at Russell Westbrook from year one to Russell Westbrook now, he plays the same exact way. Now, that has been to his detriment a lot of times, and that has been to his favor a lot of times. Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. In my opinion, he's one of the greatest point guards we've ever seen. While he doesn't get a lot of love, or let me say this, he hasn't seen the uber success that you would hope a player of his stature would warrant. He has been successful. Again, I think he's one of the greatest point guards ever. He's been an MVP. He's led the league in triple doubles 4 years in his career. Russell Westbrook is who he is. Now, the reason why I said Kirk Cousins reminds me a lot of Russell Westbrook is because when you look at Russell Westbrook's stint, let's say with the Lakers or with the Clippers or with the Washington Wizards, what you saw was people, teams, organizations trying to turn Russell Westbrook into something that he has not been his entire career. Whether you're talking about the Lakers wanting to turn him into a jump shooter because the thing that works well with LeBron James is jump shooting players. Or when you talk about the Clippers wanting him to come off the bench. Russell Westbrook has been the same player since he came into the league. It's very hard and damn near impossible to change the makeup of a player later into his career, seeing as though he's been the same way. I'm tying this into to Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins has been the same his entire career. Atlanta knows this. Obviously, everyone's hoping for a championship. But I think Atlanta deep down understands that. They understand what Kirk Cousins' ceiling is because Kirk Cousins' ceiling has been the same his entire career. When Kirk Cousins play his best, he is a top-tier quarterback. But when Kirk Cousins also plays his best, that's not really a champion, a Super Bowl caliber player. Now, mind you, he's been with good teams. Some of those men, I mean, he had Justin Jefferson. So if you're Atlanta and you're looking at that, it's like, yo, all right, so we know the ceiling. Now, if he does something different, if he exceeds that ceiling, then it's just a pleasant surprise to us. On top of that, this man is coming off of, a ruptured Achilles. So there's a good chance he might not be available the start of the season. Why would you not, I'm not going to say risk it, but why would you not get someone that you hope to be his replacement? Because at the end of the day, I think Cam Newton said it best. You're playing until your replacement is ready and until there's a slippage in your game. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. And I think because of that, it allows Atlanta and it gives them the wiggle room to, all right, we know how good you are. I think they have a 3-year deal. We're going to prepare for the future because we understand you're not great. Now, they did pay him like a great quarterback. For that, I don't understand, but shouts out to his manager. They planned for the future immediately. I think they looked at how, that's another thing, which I think was, at first it didn't make sense until you really sit with it. Kirk Cousins is good enough to take your team out of any chance of getting a good quarterback in the draft. So, but he's not good enough to take your team to a Super Bowl, to a champ. I don't think so. So it's like, all right, Michael Penix might be the best quarterback we'll get under the tenure of Kirk Cousins. So let's snag him. So once Kirk Cousins is over, we can figure it out with Michael Penix. Now, yeah, I know Michael Penix's age and injury history is a problem, but I understand the thinking with Atlanta. But I will go as far as to say this. There is a lot of promise coming out of Atlanta. And I think a lot of that promise is banking on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins. Because, again, they've had Kyle Pitts for the longest. I think he was one of the highest drafted tight ends in NFL history. I'm thinking they would hope that their quarterback can get the best, because the quarterback they've had since, whether we talk about Taylor Heineke, whether we talk about Marcus Mariota, whether we talk about Desmond Ridder, you're hoping that your quarterback can get the best out of your once prized pick. Drake London has an exceptional upside at the wide receiver position. Bijan Robinson has the ability to be one of the best running backs in the. So Tyler Agler. Then on defense, like I said, now you were able to snag Matthew Judon from the Patriots. Matthew Judon is one of the best defensive players in football. You also get Justin Simmons. You also have Jesse Bates. This team is great. This team, AJ Terrell. This team, Grady Jarrett. This team has some names, man. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that this team is good enough to win a championship or anything, or Super Bowl. But what I will say is this team is good enough to win their division. A lot rides on Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is good enough to win the division. I just don't think he's good enough to win a Super Bowl. But I think that there's a lot of promise coming to Atlanta. Or not even coming to. There's a lot of promise in Atlanta, and I think that they're going to be really good this season. If not good, at least fun to watch. They have the players. They have the excitement of the fans. I think they're going to be a fun watch. So, and obviously, I don't know if he's going to be ready day one, but if not, I think that excitement. I'm interested to see what Michael Penix looks like against an actual NFL roster, and in the regular season. So we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, and speaking of excitement, let's go over to that one team. The one team that I said doesn't really have a shot, in my opinion, of making much of any noise in their division. When you look at the Carolina Panthers, let me ask you guys, why do teams hire new coaches? Now, obviously, there's an obvious answer. The obvious answer is you don't have one. But to hire a new coach means that one is leaving, or one got fired, meaning they did not reach the expectations that was set on them. And if you look at the Carolina Panthers last year, they were by far the worst team in football. By far. And a lot of that is centered around, let me say this, a lot of the criticism outside of the coaching staff was centered around the young quarterback, Bryce Young. Rookie quarterback coming out of Alabama, was the number 1 overall pick, I believe. The worst thing, and I talked about this before, but the worst thing that ever happened to Bryce Young was C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud not only going after Bryce Young, but having the year that he had compared to having the year that Bryce Young had. You see, when you look at the headlines, when you look at the stats, everything spells C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young. I mean, C.J. Stroud won the Offensive Rookie of the Year, I believe. C.J. Stroud led the Texans to the playoffs. In fact, won a playoff game. C.J. Stroud is widely considered, at least at this moment, a top 10 quarterback in the league. There's a lot of promise when we talk about C.J. Stroud. There is absolutely no promise when we talk about Bryce Young. When we talk about Bryce Young, we talk about how that was one of the worst draft picks in NFL history. We talk about his size and how he's a small, skinnier quarterback in stature. And we talk about his struggles last year. The reason why I'm talking about this, and the reason why this is such a... I started this segment with this, or I started this section with it, is because everything ties back into the team. You know, my friend asked me the other day, and this is the age-old question that people ask, sports fans ask. What is harder to win? Is it harder to win an NBA championship, or is it harder to win a Super Bowl? And I said, without a doubt, now I'm a basketball guy, but I said without a doubt it's a Super Bowl. Because you can be as great as you are. You can be the greatest player ever. If you have a bad team, or if your defense doesn't show up, if your players doesn't catch the ball, you're at a disadvantage, and you only have one game to win. The NBA Finals obviously is tough to win 4, but on the loser side, if you lose one game, it's curtains. Football is the ultimate team sport. When you look at this, while yes, Bryce Young was not that good last year, admittedly so, he had the shortcomings, the usual shortcomings of a rookie that gets thrown into the fire early and was not prepared and did not have the support system around him. I'm not blaming all Bryce Young's misfortunes on the team or the coaching staff, but I'm blaming a lot of it because, as we know with rookies in any sport, the best way, now there's some, let's get into it. There's some that is just incredible. You're not going to get a LeBron James. You're not going to get a Carmelo Anthony off the bat. There's a reason why 2003 NBA draft is widely considered one of the best. Very rare that you get 3 to 4 players that are instantly good. In football, that percentage, that likelihood shrinks. C.J. Stroud is one of them. At least that's what it looks like. But I also know that C.J. Stroud had Nico Collins. He had Tank Dell. He has D'Amico Ryans. He has a great system around him. I say all that to say this. I look at this team that is the Carolina Panthers. You have Deontay Johnson that you got from Pittsburgh. You have Terrence Marshall, who hasn't been able to stay healthy, unfortunately, his entire career. You have Adam Thielen, who is getting up there in age, or is already up there. You have Chuba Hubbard. You have Miles Sanders. You have Jonathan Mingo. You have Xavier Legetts, I think his name is. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Jadeveon Clowney, who's the hometown guy. Shaq Thompson. J.C. Horn. You have names. Now, some of your best names, DJ Moore, Brian Burns, they're gone. But you have names and you have players, but this is not, which goes back to my original point as to why are head coaches hired. Last year, everything, including Bryce Young, failed. When I look at this roster, I don't see much success with the Carolina Panthers this year. Yes, I think that the wide receiver core is better or good, okay, decent. But the offensive line isn't better, I don't think. The Carolina Panthers, their expectation should not, and in my opinion, cannot be Super Bowl going into this year. I think the only expectation that the Carolina Panthers should have is being better than last year. Because last year it's very hard to get much worse than what happened last year. And I know how this cycle goes. I know how this NFL cycle goes, and I know how the patience cycle goes with a quarterback. Meaning, I understand that it's coming. If this year looks anything similar to last year in terms of Bryce Young, that patience window, especially with a new head coach and some flashy names that you have now on the roster, that patience that people have, and a lot of people don't have the patience. And again, that's why I said the worst thing that happened to Bryce Young was C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud also diminished the patience that people have for Bryce Young, seeing as though Bryce Young was drafted before C.J. Stroud. But you have a new coach. You have some pieces. If this looks anything like last year, which I think it will. Yeah, I think it's going to get the noise surrounding Carolina, especially Bryce Young, is going to be much louder than I think anyone could anticipate. Especially Carolina, seeing as though they drafted him so high. But again, I don't see much. Let me see something. Let me see what their schedule looks like. Let me see what their schedule looks like, because I want to see just how tough their schedule is. I'm not spinning to win. All right. So let's see. They have the Chargers. They have the Bengals. They have the Bears, who I think is going to be much improved. They have Washington. They have Kansas City, Philly, Dallas. Yeah. There are some winnable games if this team is good, like the Raiders, the Broncos, the Giants. But then they have some tough ones. So I think that I don't know if there's much opportunity for, a winning season with this roster, but I think that there's opportunity for improvement. There's opportunity to be better, winning the games that you're supposed to win. I don't think you're supposed to win. It's a tall task winning against, the Cowboys, winning against the Chiefs, winning against the Eagles. Those are tough tasks. But you can beat the Giants. You can beat, the maybe the Saints once or twice. I don't know. But this is a very important season for the Carolina Panthers, because this is the season where, as an organization, if you make all these, you make some moves, especially with the head coach and everything. If these moves don't pan out, you gotta look at yourself and you gotta look at the organization in the mirror and say it's time to pivot. And I don't know what that looks like with this team, especially with the owner that they have. So we'll have to see. Speaking of have to see, let's move over to a team that has a lot of promise. And that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You see, one thing that outside of, obviously, if you win the Super Bowl, which is the Kansas City Chiefs, they think their goal is to, repeat, just look better at doing it. But every team's goal is to improve off of the year before. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a really good season last year. They had a surprising season. Surprising because a lot of people, including myself, has had, let's say, tough criticisms for Baker Mayfield and for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, which hasn't been the greatest since the departure of Tom Brady. And a lot of the talking point last year was this is a quote-unquote rehabilitation year, which was last year. Last year, let's say, was a rehabilitation year for Baker Mayfield. There was a lot of people, including myself, I'm not absolved from it, that didn't have much expectation for this team before the season started, because I've seen how Baker Mayfield ended, or I've seen his stint with the Cleveland Browns. I've seen his stint with the Rams. I've seen his stint with the Panthers. It didn't look good. So I was wrong and pleasantly surprised, pleasantly shocked as to how good Baker Mayfield was for the Tampa Bay team. Now, he wasn't good at the end of he wasn't good the last game against the Lions, but still, you go to the playoffs, you beat the Philadelphia Eagles. This team was much better than I thought it would be. And this team got better. Sort of. You get Chris Godwin, who was dealing with injuries last year. You have Mike Evans. You get Sterling Sharp from the Giants. You still have Vea. You still have Levante David. You still have Anton Whitfield. This team is good. But the issue with this team, not issue. Let me not say issue, because it's not really an issue. I think the questions with this team is, because you also have Rasheed White. The question is, was last year a fluke? You see, the beauty about all these teams, all these divisions, is there are storylines that are attached to every single one of them. And hopefully by the end of the season, those storylines are complete. Those questions are answered. The question that we have for the Buccaneers is, was last year a fluke? Not just for the team, but for Baker Mayfield, for the coaching staff, this team was a game away from being in the NFC Championship. A game away. Actually, they were a drive away. If it wasn't for a pick from Baker Mayfield, they were a drive away for potentially making it to the NFC Championship. When you have the resume that someone like Baker Mayfield has, I don't think it... How do I say this? One year, I'll say it like this. Let's go back to Atlanta. When we talk about Russell Westbrook. If Russell Westbrook came out next year and shot, let's say 45 or 41% from three, I think fans will look at that like, whoa, hold up. That is just a fluke year. Now, if he does it 2 years in a row, then I think people will say, oh, Russell Westbrook has changed. Russell Westbrook has improved. Russell Westbrook has addressed one of the issues in his game. He is a legit shooter now. Going back to this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team and specifically Baker Mayfield, we've seen Baker Mayfield at his lowest. And Baker Mayfield's lowest is low. He was widely considered one of the worst quarterbacks in the league at a point of his career. Now, I'm not saying that last year was a fluke. I'm saying those are the questions that are attached to not just the Buccaneers, but Baker Mayfield. And I think if he has a season similar to last year, I think those questions start to get silenced. I think those concerns start to get silenced because like I've done it back to back now. And I think this team has a chance to do that. I don't know if they're gonna get as far as, I don't know if they're gonna repeat and get to the second round of the playoffs or maybe even make the playoffs. I don't know. But they have, Tristan Wirfs. They have a good offensive line. They have great pieces. Mike Evans is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Chris Godwin, both of them are kind of getting up there in age, but they still are productive. Chris Godwin, he dealt with injury all last year. You're hoping that you get a full healthy season from him. Same thing as Sterling Shepard. He most of his career has dealt with injury, unfortunately. You're hoping that he can give you a full season healthy, not being a main target like he was a lot of the years in New York. There's a lot of things that are trending positively and trending in the direction of the Buccaneers having a good season. I think that Atlanta has made better moves, especially with Matthew Judon. I think Atlanta has the best shot, in my opinion, to win this division. But a lot of questions are centered around this Buccaneers team. The main one, in my opinion, was last year a fluke? And a lot of these players, don't get me wrong, they're great. Anton Whitfield is probably the best or one of the best safeties in the league. Vita Vea is one of the best nose tackles in the league. Like, Levante David is still one of the best linebackers in the league. But you lost a bunch of pieces. And Levante David is getting up there in age. Vita Vea is getting up there in age. Whitfield, he's young, but he's still, you know what I'm saying? The biggest question surrounding this team, the Bucs, was last year a fluke? And I think with the pieces around Baker Mayfield, we're going to know if it was or not. I'm under the impression that it wasn't. Now, yes, I was very loud in saying, my doubt, or I was very loud with my doubts with Baker Mayfield, but with all the pieces that he has around him, I was wrong last year, and I'm hoping not to be wrong this year, because I'm now on the Baker Mayfield is at least a decent quarterback. They paid him I think they gave him a 3-year extension. I think this team is going to be good. This team spells middle of the pack good. I don't think that they're championship caliber. I mean, I did have Chase Edmonds, Rashid White. I didn't realize Kyle Trask was still there. But yeah, I think that the Baker Mayfield, this is a very important year for Baker Mayfield. Yes, I understand he has the bag, quote unquote, and his contract is I think guaranteed for another 3 years. But the questions are: was last year just 1 year, or is it a trend? Or is it now going to be the norm? And I think we'll have to see. And I'm hoping that it's not a 1 year thing. So we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, man. Let's talk about the final team in the NFC South, which is the Saints. I think this is the first year that I can remember in a while that I don't think there's much excitement for this Bucs team. For this Saints team. What is the thing that we always say? Going into almost every season, talking about the Saints, we say, what? This can be the Saints' year. The Saints have the best defense. The Saints have great offensive weapons. The Saints have we always talk about this could be the Saints' year. Or you want to know a sleeper team? Oh, I know you've heard this before. A sleeper team in the NFC? New Orleans Saints. They say that almost every single year. And rightfully so. When you look at the rosters that the Saints have had, one would admit that that team should be a good team. But year after 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 year, the Saints do nothing but underachieve. And as we sit here today, what can we say about the Saints? You guessed it. They have one of the best defenses they have the potential to have one of the best defenses in football. You have Chase Young. You have Cam Jordan. You have Demario Davis. You have Willie Gay. You have Marshawn Lattimore, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jonathan Abrams, who can't seem to find a solid home now. Like, you look at this roster and it's like, hey, they got a squad. Oh, and on the offensive side, you guessed it, you have Chris Olave, you have Rashid Shaheed, you have Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Derek Carr. You have players. If you look at that roster, I understand why someone would say, hey, this roster can be a sleeper. Oh, I forgot about Taysom Hill, Marquise Callaway. I'm not going to fall for it this year with the Saints. I don't think the Saints are going to be as bad as the Carolina Panthers. Let's get that out the way. With this roster, I will preface it by saying, with this roster, the Saints have a good shot of winning the division. I refuse to put them over the Falcons right now, and I refuse to put them over the Bucs. The Saints are now forever going to be a have to see to believe team. I'm not doing any sleeper predictions with the Saints because I need to see. I am going to be pleasantly shocked if they turn into that sleeper team because they haven't done it for years. And on top of that, Alvin Kamara, he's up there in age now. Like a lot of the defense, Marcus Lattimore, they're good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to look at this as a rejuvenation year for Chase Young because he was traded from Washington, didn't really work in San Francisco. But let me talk about Derek Carr for a second. You see, there's a reason why talking about all of these moves, talking about all of these teams, there's a reason why I have spent most of the breakdowns as far as these teams with the quarterback. Yeah, you can have the greatest running back, the greatest, like, gone are the days where your quarterback can be, and I talked about this last year with Brock Purdy. Gone are the days where your quarterback can just be a high level clock, like, okay player. No, he has to be good. I have been a staunch Derek Carr supporter. Going back and listening to a lot of my takes, going back and listening to how I talked about Derek Carr, how I talked about his situation in Oakland at the time and Vegas, I have been a staunch supporter of Derek Carr. I've been one of those people to say, how do you expect Derek Carr to succeed if you don't surround him with the pieces? I'm not going to go as far as say a top 10, but I do think that we've seen glimpses of Derek Carr be a top tier quarterback. Look here, Derek Carr. Last year was bad. In fact, I will say that last year's lack of success stemmed mainly, you can say it was Dennis Allen, the coach. But a lot of it was because of you, Derek. I think there's not a player in this division, not Kirk Cousins, not Bryce Young, not Baker Mayfield. There's not a player in this division that has more pressure and needs to rewrite what happened last year more than Derek Carr. Now, yes, I understand that Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles rupture. I understand that Bryce Young is coming off arguably the worst season in NFL history by a quarterback. But there were so many expectations last year for the New Orleans Saints. And a lot of them was not reached because of the inconsistency of their quarterback, Derek Carr. Now you can say, well, it was actually mainly Dennis Allen. Okay, they have a new coach. Let's see how they do now. And if they look anything like they did last year because of the play of Derek Carr, I think I would officially get off at the next stop. Because, and I will say it, I don't believe it, but I'll say it. This team has every avenue to be good. The question is, will they be? A lot of it is riding on Derek Carr, who did not particularly have the greatest season last year. As a whole, there's a reason why I started with the NFC South first. I think that there's interesting storylines and interesting angles that you can attack every single division with. But the reason why I started with the NFC South first, now, at the end of every divisional breakdown, I'm going to, when I'm done ranking every division or talking about every division, I'm going to rank them. But spoiler alert, there's a reason why I started with the NFC South. I think that the NFC South, last year it was apparent. But this year, I think the NFC South has a chance of being, yet again, the worst division in football. I think the AFC North, oh no, because they also have the Dolphins. Yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah. While the NFC South this year has a lot of potential and has potential to be one of the most exciting divisions in football, they also have a chance of being the worst division in football. So we'll see. Now, no, if people are asking, the order in which I am talking about all these divisions doesn't mean that's the order that I'm ranking them. Like, I don't think, that I'm not saying because I talked about the NFC South and I think that they have the potential to be the worst, and the next division I talk about, I'm not saying that the next division is going to be the next worst. I'm just flowing at this point. Speaking of flowing, let's go to our next division, which is the heralded, which is the Division of Champions, which is the NFC East. And the first team I'm going to talk about is the beloved Dallas Cowboys. It's the America's team. Now, when I say Division of Champions, obviously I'm talking about the 90s and the 80s, and for the Giants, the 2000s, and for the Eagles, 2010s. This division hasn't been viewed as that division in years. There was a time in football, there was a time where the best division by a country mile was the NFC East. Think about that. The Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders, and New York Giants. There was a point, a long point in time where that division, the NFC East, was the most feared division. Obviously, it's not the case anymore, but that's why I started with the Division of Champions. This is one of the rare divisions where every single team has a championship, if you think about it. But let's talk about this Dallas Cowboys team for a second. Now, you guys can go back. I'm not going to bore you with regurgitated topics. You guys can go back and talk about my feelings towards Jerry Jones. I think that was in the last episode or the episode before last. I know it's definitely a clip out there. You guys can talk about who I think they should prioritize, or you guys can go back and look when I talked about who I think they should prioritize between Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Parsons as far as a contract. I don't need to sit here and talk about that again. All of those topics have been talked about. What I want to talk about today when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, and honestly, it's not all Dak Prescott's fault. I know when I was talking about the NFC South, I focused heavy on the quarterbacks, and rightfully so. I don't think all of this is Dak Prescott's fault. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys are going to have a good year in the regular season like they usually do. I don't know if they'll get to 10 wins or 12 wins, but usually the Dallas Cowboys are one of those teams that dominate in the regular season. But for some reason, it's not even some reason. I think that this is the first year we're going to see the decline of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I don't think that the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders. I don't think they're Super Bowl bound. No. But I think they'll have a decent season. But I think that you're going to start to see the decline. And the reason why is the mantra that I usually live by when it comes to NFL teams. Now, I'm also going to say, and I'm going to give credit, this isn't an original. Like, I didn't wake up and I didn't create this. Somebody, I think Colin Cowherd said it. And once he said it, I kind of did a little bit of research. And I was like, you know what? He's absolutely right. What Colin Cowherd said, shouts out to Colin, he said that usually the loudest team in the offseason that year doesn't really win. And I was like, is that true? Because I was thinking, if I look back, some of the teams that had loud off seasons, like last year, the Jets had probably the loudest off season. What happened with the Jets? I don't wish injury upon anybody, but the Jets did not have a good season last year. Let's just put it that way. As much as I love the Ravens, being from the DMV area, now no, Baltimore is not considered the DMV area, but still. As much as I love the Ravens had a very loud offseason a few years ago with Lamar Jackson. And while I think that there's high hopes for the Ravens this year, just like it was last year, did the Ravens win? No. Now, obviously, only one team can win. I get it. And only one of these teams in the NFL has Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce. Oh, and Chris Jones. But I look at this Cowboys team, and it has been loud and story after story, whether we talk about Dak Prescott and the allegations that came out to be false. I'm not going to rehash them. I'm not going to talk about them, but those allegations, if you want to know what it is, go look it up. Whether you want to talk about bringing back Ezekiel Elliott, whether you want to talk about the CeeDee Lamb contract, whether you want to talk about them losing a bunch of players on their offensive line and the defensive line, losing Dan Quinn to Washington and a bunch of those players to Washington. Yes, they have names. I think CeeDee Lamb is still widely considered, you can argue, a top 5 wide receiver in the league. Yes, Brandon Cooks, I think, is one of the most underrated pieces in football. He's always, now he didn't have it last year, obviously, but he's obviously either exceeding or teetering on that 1,000-yard mark. Jake Ferguson is an exceptional tight end. Zach Martin is still arguably the best offensive right guard in football. You still have DeMarcus Lawrence on the defensive side of the ball. Michael Parsons. You get Eric Kendricks. Trayvon Diggs is coming back from injury. Deron Bland, who broke the record for most pick sixes last year. Malik Hooker should be back. Like, you have good players. I just feel with how loud it was this year, and the fact of during the offseason, your job is to get marginally better than you were the year before. Some teams have to do more than others, but even championship teams, even the Kansas City Chiefs, does stuff to get better in the offseason. It seems like the Dallas Cowboys hasn't done anything. Their biggest acquisition this offseason was Ezekiel Elliott, to get him back from the Patriots. You think that's moving the needle? No. I think that there's a lot of question marks surrounding Mike McCarthy, I think there's a lot of question marks surrounding this roster because what you're essentially saying is we were good enough to run it back. Because that's pretty much what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. We're going to run it back. Even after seeing how they got dismantled in the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers, a team that that the Dallas Cowboys were much better than, at least in the regular season. I don't know. I see a lot of regular season success, but I just feel like this is the start of a decline. Especially if you see the season that you had a year before and you think to yourself, we'll just run it back. What? Like, you lose Stephon Gilmore. I ain't see him on this roster. Yeah, you lose Stephon Gilmore. I think he's still a free agent. Your best acquisition on the defensive side of the ball is who? Eric Kendricks? Yeah. I see, especially, let me see what their schedule looks like. Ooh, hold up. I take that back. You got to play the Browns, which is a tough defense. The Saints, a tough defense. Baltimore, a tough defense. Pittsburgh, a tough defense. The Giants, a tough-ish defense. The Lions, the 49ers, the Eagles, the Texans, Commander. Yeah, Cincinnati. Yeah, this is going to be a tough season for this team. Everything I just said about them having a good season, let's take that back. Let's circle the block. Let's come back. Dallas is a beautiful place. I went to Dallas for my birthday. Beautiful place. I will say, if you do go to Dallas, do not eat 2 plates, nearly 3 plates full of spinach and think you're going to have a good night. Because, boy, let me tell you, that spinach almost took me. In fact, that spinach did take me out. But Dallas is a beautiful place. So I understand why people would want to live there, right? And I understand why, if you're Dak Prescott or if you're anyone, I understand why you would want to, play for that team. Except for the fact that they don't make any moves. And this might be a tough year for Dallas because you're playing against some of the best defenses in football. Browns, Saints, Ravens, Lions, Eagles, 49ers, Texans, the Bucs, Washington. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So I don't know about that one. I don't know about that. But I do stand firm on the belief that this is the first year that we're really going to start to see a decline from Dallas. And hell, we can look up next year and Dak Prescott might be gone. So, and CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know, but we'll see. Let's move forward and let's talk about a team that I think there is extremely high expectations for. That is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, as much for people that know me, know I'm a Washington fan. I grew up, 25 minutes from FedEx Field, which is not even called FedEx Field anymore. I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called Commanders Field or something. So I preface that by saying it pains me to say this. But this is a big year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not because of how bad they played last year, especially defensively. they were horrible last year. Now, I know that they have a new offensive or defensive coordinator. They still have Nick Sirianni, which is kind of confusing. But this is a big year for the Philadelphia Eagles because, simple as it is, they have Super Bowl aspirations and expectations. The NFC is the weaker division. In fact, when you look at the NFC, I can only really see 3 teams that I think are legitimate Super Bowl caliber teams. And the Philadelphia Eagles are one of them. You have arguably the best wide receiver duo in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. You still have Dallas Goedert at the tight end position. You get Saquon Barkley, who is, when healthy, widely considered one of the best running backs in the league, along or behind one of the best offensive lines, whether we talk about Lane Johnson, whether we talk about Jordan Matilla. Like, this team is going to be great. I will say this, though. They got a lot of acquisition on the defensive side of the ball as well. I mean, you have Devin White that they got from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Josh Sweat is still there. Nakobe Dean. Darius Slay. You got C.J. Garner-Johnson back from the 49ers. Not 49ers, from the Lions. I'm sorry. I'm still shocked James Bradbury's still there, but hey, especially how bad he played last year. You have the big boys in Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. I forgot about Nolan Smith Jr. still there as well on the edge. This team is great. At least this team has the names to be great. And Brandon Graham, I forgot about him, but he's getting up there. He's yeah. I think the question that's going to be answered this year. I'm not saying that you have to win a Super Bowl, but you have to look like a Super Bowl caliber team. And you have to at least, in my opinion, get to the North NFC Championship. This roster is an NFL Championship roster. The question that will be answered, because I think that people are asking this question. It's not as loud as you would think, but people are asking this question. Is Jalen Hurts a good quarterback? Now, you're probably thinking that, like, wait, what? Jalen Hurts, the same Jalen Hurts that took the Eagles to the Super Bowl, the same Jalen Hurts that, was electrifying, like that Jalen Hurts? Yeah, that Jalen Hurts. That question is there because the Jalen Hurts that we're seeing sort of mirrors the Jalen Hurts in Alabama. The reason why people were questioning if Jalen Hurts is even a NFL quarterback is because of his inconsistency. He was like that at Alabama. He was like that at Oklahoma. When Jalen Hurts is playing at his best, you get what you got, 2 years ago, when you get Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team, which was by far the most stacked team and a historic defense, might I add. They had a historically great defense. But that team, the Eagles team, made it to the championship. Well, what happens when the defense didn't play as good as you thought they would the next year? Well, this team was horrible. Jalen Hurts has all the attributes to be a good quarterback. And he may be a good quarterback. But what I'm saying is, now the expectation, after what we saw 2 years ago, and after we saw last year, the expectations are extremely high. And if you can't get it done with this roster, And I'm not even saying win a Super Bowl, but at least compete for one, then I promise you the questions and the critiques are going to be much louder for Jalen Hurts. Because Jalen Hurts, when he was at Alabama, when he was at Oklahoma, he showed flashes that he was the best quarterback in the nation. But it's like this, man. It's like Jalen Hurts' college career was like a canyon, like a mountain. It has some high highs, but when it was low, it is low. And this roster is going to prove to you if he is a good quarterback or not. Because this roster, it is hard to lose with this roster. Now, I am interested to see how he plays and how this offensive line plays without Jason Kelce, who obviously retired. But it's going to be extremely difficult to fail with this roster, especially in the NFC East, especially in the NFC in total. So I think the people that are questioning if Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback or not, you're going to get your answer this year. I'll save that for when we talk about them. But yeah, you're going to get your answer this year. I think this team. Oh shoot, I forgot Kenny Pickett was on the Eagles. But I think that this team has all the components of competing for a Super Bowl. I would be shocked if they don't at least make it to, or if they're not in the top 3 teams in the NFL or in at least the NFC. I'd be shocked. I think there's a lot of aspiration and there's a lot of promise for this team. And outside of injuries, because obviously you can't predict injuries, outside of injuries, you're going to know a lot about Jalen Hurts and this roster come this season. I'll just say that. Speaking of promise, let's talk about my boys, the Washington Commanders. I don't know if you feel it for my DSP listeners. I appreciate you guys being here. I don't know if you feel the excitement in my voice, the excitement that just came over me. But this is a feeling that I have not felt in a while. This is a feeling that, this feels good, man. I'm kind of cheesing, bro. That is the feeling of hope and the feeling of promise going into an NFL season. Look, I'm realistic, okay? I don't think that this Washington team is a title contender. I don't think this Washington team has the best roster, honestly. I don't think this Washington team is really going to compete to win the NFC East. But what I love about this team is it looks like with a new ownership, new coaching regime, coaching staff, Dan Quinn and all them. Dan Quinn wasn't my first choice, obviously, but it is what it is. But there is promise, man. When you see the names on this roster, Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Zach Ertz, Jahan Dotson, Jamison Crowder, Brandon Robinson, Austin Eckler. And then you got Jaden Daniels. You see what, man? I don't really have much of a breakdown, man. I'm just excited. Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Deontay Fowler, Bobby Wagner. Ooh, man. Yo, every single time I see Emmanuel Forbes, I get upset. I know I shouldn't have. I probably shouldn't have divulged that information, but I do. Not because he just played awful, but because we could have had Christian Gonzalez. Now I know Christian Gonzalez got hurt last year, but before he was hurt, he was a standout in Oregon, and he's a standout with the Patriots, and we picked. I'm not expecting much from this Washington team. But I do think that Jaden Daniels has a good shot, especially what we've seen, which I'll give it briefly, but what we've seen in the preseason. I think that Jaden McDaniels has a good shot of competing, at least I'll say, for the Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think this team's going to be fun. We have Marcus Mariota as a backup, so I think he's a good vet to learn from, unless he gets hurt, because I remember in the quarterback, he just dipped. But I'm excited, man. As a Washington fan, there's excitement. Now, I'm a realist Washington fan. I don't expect much winning. I don't expect much. I will say this. I don't expect much winning, but I do expect us to be competitive. Like I said, our schedule. Jaden Daniels looks so good in burgundy. Our schedule ain't the most difficult. Like, we got the Bucs, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, hold up, Bears, Pittsburgh. I don't know what's going on with them, but their defense is tough. Yeah, man. Lord. I'm just excited, man. I'm excited. I don't have much breakdown of them. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be good. And that's another thing. This is I feel like we have the quarterback of the future. We have our quarterback. I haven't felt this way since RG3. Yeah, I'm sorry, RG, but I haven't felt this way since RG3. Man, it feels good. It feels good. Now, and I think that Jaden Daniels has a good shot of winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Whew. I'm excited. I don't expect much winning. I'm just saying I'm excited. Yeah, that's my analyst. That's my breakdown, man. This team we got Chris Paul on the team. I'm joking. We do have Chris Paul though, but yeah, I don't expect much. Like, I think we can win some games. A lot of those are winning games, or a lot of those matchups are winning matchups, but we'll see. Oh boy. And the last team I got to talk about in the NFC East is the Giants. You know, the Giants is the perfect example why teams don't like to do Hard Knocks. If you want a prime example why teams usually turn down Hard Knocks, look at the Giants. The Hard Knocks has done nothing but make the Giants look like such an inept organization. When you're talking about how we were able to see the whole Saquon Barkley situation unravel in real time, how staunch the ownership is, and how committed they are to Daniel Jones when he has shown them nothing to be committed about. When some of the roster decisions that they've made, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Washington fan. I think oh boy, how do I say this? I think the Giants have a case to be one of the worst teams next year in all of football. It's just yeah, you have Jalen Wyatt. Yeah, you have Darius Slayton, who drops the ball all the time. You did get Isaiah McKenzie from you have Malik Neighbors from the draft. You have Allen Robinson II. I didn't even know he was on this team. And on the defense, you still have Dexter Lawrence, who is one of the best defensive players in football. You have Kevontae Thibodeau. Like, you have pieces, but I am so low on Daniel Jones that I think any team that rolls out Daniel Jones had. Oh, and you have Brian Burns. I think that was your biggest acquisition in the offseason from the Panthers. Brian Burns is one of the best defensive ends in football. So that was pretty good. I think your defense is going to be okay. But that's always been the case almost for the Giants. Like, your defense has been good. When they won 2 Super Bowls, it wasn't because Eli Manning was just the next coming. No, it was because they had stout defensive teams. And their team this year is going to be good defensively. I just think that offensively, Daniel Jones is not good, in my opinion. And I think, like, we have to really question Brian Dable. Like, don't get me wrong. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Like, because a lot of what happened last year, you can say was because Daniel Jones got hurt, or you can say it's because of Daniel Jones, but Brian Dable looked nothing like he did the year he won Coach of the Year. So, yeah. You have Devin Singletary as your running back, bro. None of this matter, bro. If you have Daniel Jones as your starting quarterback, and this is, and I'm Daniel Jones, in my opinion, is out of the 4, out of Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Daniel Jones. I know Jaden Daniels hasn't played a snap, but I think Daniel Jones is the worst out of all of them. So, yeah, Hard Knocks did some irreparable damage to this team as far as this image, because if you watch Hard Knocks, they just look inept, bro. Like, they just don't look good as an organization. So, yeah, we'll see, man. That has been my breakdown for the NFC South and the NFC North. Tomorrow or next episode, I will figure out which 2 I'm going to do. But those are if you feel, let me know who you feel is coming out of the NFC South. Let me know who you feel is coming out of the NFC North. If you are, which I know people are going to do it, since a lot of people are arguing my head off about my Steph Curry and LeBron James takes. If you feel some type of way about what I said, leave it in the comments, and I don't mind reading it. I don't mind going back and forth. Just let me know. But those are my breakdowns of the NFC South and NFC North. Or, I'm sorry, NFC East. NFC East. Before I go, the unpopular topic of the day. The last topic is going to center around the NBA, shockingly. The schedule was released 2 days ago, and with the schedule releases, we know all of the nationally televised games that are happening, meaning we also know which teams, which players are going to be on TV more than others, at least nationally. I think the NBA understands this better than any league in sports. I think the NBA understands that their popularity, their revenue, just their overall growth stems not from the teams, but from the players. Well, don't get me wrong, the teams are important. Like the NFL. The NFL is behind the shield. They back their teams more than their players at all, ever. Same as the MLB, same as baseball. Now with Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge and those people, they're trying to push those players more, but still overall the message is they are pushing their teams. The NBA is really good at pushing their players. And you see that by the nationally televised game. The Lakers and Golden State have the two most. They also have the two most famous players in basketball, which is LeBron James and Steph Curry. The Phoenix Suns have, I think, 30 or 31, and they have Kevin Durant. All the top teams either have a top player or one of a good story. Like the Boston Celtics is third. They have they're coming off of winning the championship. They have Jason Tatum. The Knicks have Jalen Brunson. Dallas has Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson. Denver has, Nikola Jokic. The NBA understands that their players is what draws attention. I think the NBA also understands that there is about to be a shift. There's about to be a change. Marketing is a group effort. It takes a group to successfully market. And with that, you have to understand they understand it. They understand, especially when you see how they covered the Olympics. You have knowing that your popularity comes from players. You have to understand that you have to help in promoting your product. You have to help in promoting your players. Now, why am I saying this? After saying that the NBA does the best job at promoting their players, right? I'm looking at I'm looking at all these nationally televised games and how many they have. And what they're showing, what the league is showing us is they're not ready to give up on the promotion of Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. And I'm not saying they should. Let me first say that I'm not saying they should give up. Don't hear me say that. But what I'm saying is you also understand that Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant are not going to be there much longer. And what they could possibly face is what the league faced when Michael Jordan left. They didn't do a good job at promoting somebody else. Now, no, nobody else is LeBron James. Nobody else is Michael Jordan. But they did not do a good job at promoting their other players. Now, the league is trying it because we're talking about this youth movement, right? Yes, you see Minnesota has 25 games or 26 games nationally televised. They have Anthony Edwards. One of the youngest and best teams in basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, they have 25, 26 games. But when I look down, all the teams, I'm trying to put this in a cohesive way. I'm not saying that you don't promote Steph Curry. I'm not saying that you don't promote LeBron James. I'm not saying that you don't promote Kevin Durant. They are obviously first ballot Hall of Famers. They are the most popular players in your league. But the team that I'm looking mostly at is the Orlando Magic. Now, you're probably saying, why the hell would you care about promotion for the Orlando Magic? The Orlando Magic is not Golden State. They're not LA. They're not Phoenix. I know. But the Orlando Magic only have, I think, 9 nationally televised games. And most of those televised games are on NBA TV, which a lot of people do not have. Meaning, you have a young star in Pablo Banchero that nobody really knows about unless you watched him fail in FIBA, or you watched him lose to Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs. And on top of that, look at all the teams outside of, okay, Let's go back. LA Lakers, aging star LeBron James. Golden State Warriors, aging star. The youngest team and the youngest star that is really being promoted is the Boston Celtics and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Yes, you have Luka Doncic, but he has less games than the New York Knicks. Yes, you have Giannis, but Giannis has less games than the Denver Nuggets. And you're the youngest cash cow, I guess, in promoting darling is Anthony Edwards, and he has less games than the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I get the Philadelphia 76ers just got Paul George. I get it. What I'm saying is this. The future of the NBA is coming faster than you think. And while no, I'm not here saying you do not promote Steph, LeBron, and KD. I think you ride that proverbial train until the wheels fall off. Because they're the most popular. They're still great. We saw what they did in the Olympics. But marketing, just like growth, is a group effort. And it is an effort that needs to be planned correctly. And what it seems like the NBA is doing is they're not, how do I say this? Outside of the Boston Celtics that just won a championship, outside of Anthony Edwards, outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they're not really promoting the youth movement, which is about to happen sooner than later, than they should be. Because there should be no reason why the Houston Rockets that has Alex Şengün, that has Jalen Green, only has 11 games. I understand they weren't good, but they should have more nationally televised games than the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, I'm pretty much accepted the fact that the league hates Trae Young, which is why he only has 8 nationally televised games and can't make an Olympic team to save his life. But why is the Orlando Magic, one of the youngest and promising teams in the league, only has 9 games? Come on, y'all. I get it. Ride that LeBron James train. Ja has 17 games nationally televised. I understand, but Ja, why do the LA Clippers have more nationally televised games than the Memphis Grizzlies, than the Cleveland Cavaliers? And their star, no offense to him, it's just truth. Their star can't even stay on the floor. I'm just saying, I don't want the NBA to make the same mistakes. Now, I also understand that there is more talent in the league outside of LeBron, Steph, KD than there was when, Michael Jordan retired from the Bulls the first time or the second time. But I don't want the league to have to figure out and scramble. It's like, oh, how do we promote? How do we get better, or how do we promote? Because trust and believe, there is going to be a major drop-off of fans when Steph, KD, and LeBron are gone. And what you're hoping is to gain new fans with your younger players. But if you're not doing if you're not doing your due diligence now, you don't want a lot of the fan base to finally know who Paolo Banchero is once LeBron's gone, because that's like you pretty much too late. So, and there you have it, man. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, man. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate everyone that has subscribed, everyone that will subscribe. If you like the content, if you made it this far, an hour and 34 minutes in, and you're not subscribed, like, what are you doing, bro? I don't know what to tell you. But tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend and subscribe. It means a lot. Also, if you listen to my DSPs, I understand that some people only watch me on YouTube. Some people only listen to me on DSPs, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Pandora, wherever you get your DSPs, wherever you get the Unpopular Podcast, please follow, please subscribe. It means so much to you guys. I appreciate all the support. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram. Follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily there, whether we talk about reels, whether we talk about stories. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. If you want to debate, if you want to go back and forth, if you want to tell me how much you love my take, how much you hate my take, if you keep it respectful, I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you're passionate of whatever we're talking about and you're listening to me, and I appreciate both. So whether it's Instagram or TikTok or both, please follow. It means a lot. Until next time, much love.